Good morning and welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Palo Alto on this Easter morning. We come here to transform ourselves and each other and the world. Let's take a few moments to turn on our audio so that we can hear one another say hello.
Good morning.
Hello, everybody.
Hi,
Good
morning.
morning.
Hello.
Good
morning.
Hi.
Good morning, everyone.
morning.
Thanks for being here
Let
today.
me clear my throat.
Hi.
Oh, I see Easter eggs.
Easter eggs?
Yeah.
Keep an
Oh,
eye
I
out for the
see one
Easter
too.
eggs.
Yes, they're quote hidden.
Good morning. Hello.
Oh, now I see two
Oh,
of them.
now we're on an Easter egg hunt.
Oh, oh. And this the yellow ribbon. Oh, there's three in there. Yeah.
Good morning.
Welcome to this Easter service, a day of joy and gladness. You might want to keep watching for Easter eggs in today's service. You can see the order of service by following the link in the chat. There are lots of announcements there of upcoming events and also the lyrics to the songs that we'll be singing together and so on. So do click on that link when you see it in the chat. I am delighted to introduce our testimony by Kim Carlson.
When the first plane hit the Twin Towers, it was as if time stopped. In September of 2001, I was a brand new doctor, working in an outpatient clinic as a medical intern, required to be there, but thoroughly expendable. I watched the destruction and chaos unfold on the TV mounted in the waiting room, dumbstruck as everyone else, both horrified and in total disbelief that such a thing could be happening. That was the first time that I came to UUCPA. Shaken, bereft, and questioning everything after the 9/11 terrorist attacks, I was looking for spiritual guidance and comfort and hadn't the slightest idea where to find it. My family was largely a-religious when I was growing up, and I spent more time at temple with my best friend than at any church. But my grandparents were faithful Unitarians throughout their lives, and it was the only spiritual tradition that I even remotely identified with. So I showed up the first Sunday after 9/11 to a packed house and Reverend Kurt leading us through our collective pain and disbelief. It felt good to be in the company of others with the same questions, the same fears, the same grief. Being at UUCPA every Sunday helped me to find my spiritual footing when the world around us appeared to be on terribly shaky ground. Over the years, UUCPA has been a steadying force in my life through many a challenging time. Women that I met in my first Chalice group have become some of my closest and dearest friends. Our religious education teachers have given so much to my son, and the entire church community supported our foster son when he was with us for 6 months and held me up when he was abruptly taken away from us. Bringing my 2 Batmans to church every Sunday is one of my fondest memories of that time. UUCPA has helped bring meaning and understanding to the social unrest, political machinations, and environmental crises of the last 20 years of my and our collective history. I am so grateful that through the miracle of technology, we have been able to continue services and religious education throughout the pandemic. But as I say to Jasper very often on Sundays, I miss real church. I miss the physical experience of being in the main hall, the very particular way it smells, the tree branch on the wall, and the light slanting through the trees outside the windows. I miss hearing Veronica's gorgeous piano and everyone's beautiful voices in person. I miss singing the kids off to religious education waffle sundae, chatting with folks on the patio after service. Nancy in the garden. Undie Sunday. Trash man. Kids riding tricycles on the playground. All hands on deck participation services like the flower service and water service. Dan shepherding kids of all ages through amazing activities. UUCPA is my spiritual home. It is where I go to fill my cup, connect with others, and be reminded why I chose a life of service. After this past year of isolation, stress, and worry, I have been moved more than ever by the beautiful community we have built here. It matters. We matter. You matter. And we will be back together soon enough for coffee and hugs on the patio.
Kim, thank you so much for those moving words. We are so glad that you brought your confusion and sorrow here after 9/11, and that you found the welcome and wisdom that you needed and stayed to share yours. I want to take this opportunity to say thanks to the 135 individuals or households who have made their pledge to the congregation for the coming year. As you can see on our Pledge Garden graphic, over $4,600 remains in the matching fund. So to have what you give greatly increased, even doubled, please take a moment now to drop a line to pledge@uucpa.org and say what you plan to give. Or if you've already pledged but you want to take advantage of the matching fund, you can increase what you give, and if you increase it by enough money, then it will be that amount will be doubled. Everything you give, in time, in auction donations, the Sunday offering, your talents, and your pledge, all of it is invaluable and greatly appreciated. Of all of these, there's only one on which we can base our budget, and that's your pledge, along with everyone else's. Because we commit to a balanced budget, we don't plan on spending any money that isn't pledged. At next week's town hall meeting, you can ask all the questions you want about that budget. Thank you. And now, let us begin our service. Will you join me in the words and gestures of our family chalice lighting, if you know them? We light this chalice to celebrate Unitarian Universalism, the Church of the open minds, helping hands, and loving hearts. With our centering words each week, we draw on the many sources of our living tradition. Today's words come from a poem by William Butler Yeats. What do we know but that we face one another in this place? As we follow the sound of the bell into silence, let us become centered and fully present in this place and time together. Now let's join in as Bruce leads us in singing "For the Beauty of the Earth."
which from our birth over and around us lies, source of all, to thee we raise this our hymn of grateful praise. For the joy of ear and eye, for the heart and mind's delight, for the mystic harmony, linking sense to sound and sight, source of all, to thee we raise this our hymn of grateful praise. For the wonder of each hour of the day and of the night, hill and vale and tree and flower, sun and moon and stars of light, source of all, to thee we raise this our hymn of grateful praise. For the joy of human care, neighbor, stranger, parent, child, for the kinship we all share, for all gentle thoughts and mild, source of all, to thee we raise this our hymn of grateful praise.
I can't believe that Dan made us wait a whole week to hear what happened to Jesus and his followers when they went into Jerusalem. Well, it kind of makes sense because it's really the Easter story, and today is Easter. On the other hand, my Christian friends say that the way we Unitarian Universalists tell the story isn't the right way. Let's just hear the rest of the story, the way Dan's Unitarian mother used to tell it.
On his first day in Jerusalem, Jesus did little more than look around in the great temple of Jerusalem, the temple that was the holiest place for Jesus and all other Jews. Jesus couldn't help but see that around the edges of the temple there were people selling everything from goats to pigeons. And other people who would change money for you for a fee. There were people coming and going, taking shortcuts by going through the temple, carrying equipment and things to sell. The next day, Jesus returned to the temple. He walked in, chased out the people selling things, and upset the tables of the money changers. A crowd gathered round to see what this strange traveling rabbi was up to. Jesus turned to them and he quoted from the Hebrew scriptures, the book of Isaiah, where God says, "My temple shall be known as a place of prayer for all nations." Jesus said it was time that the temple went back to being a place of prayer. How could you pray when there were people walking through the temple? How could you pray peacefully when the temple was as busy as a marketplace?
How could you pray with all those pigeons?
The followers of Jesus and many other people thought Jesus did the right thing when he chased the pigeon dealers, the money lenders, and the other salespeople out of the temple. But it annoyed the powerful people who ran the temple. Jesus made them look bad. They didn't like that.
Uh-oh, here comes trouble. Shh.
In the next few days, Jesus talked to people all through Jerusalem. He got into heated discussions with some of Jerusalem's religious leaders, and he was so good at arguing that he made those powerful people look bad. They did not like that. The Romans who governed Jerusalem became concerned about Jesus. They realized that when Jesus rode into the city, he was welcomed by a crowd of people who treated him as if he were one of the old Jewish kings who used to rule over the land of Judea. The Romans wondered if Jesus was planning some kind of secret religious rebellion. How many followers did he have anyway? And what was he really up to? Jesus continued talking and preaching until Thursday evening when Passover began. Since Jesus and his followers were all observant Jews, after sundown on Thursday, they celebrated a Seder. They had the 4 cups of wine, the matzah, the bitter herbs, all the standard things that you have at a Seder. After the Seder, even though it was after dark, Jesus and his followers went to a garden to sit for a while. All his followers fell asleep, but Jesus himself was restless and he stayed awake. He had a feeling that the Romans were going to try to arrest him that very evening. He thought about everything he had taught and preached, and he was glad that he had told the truth. But he knew that the Romans didn't like the truth that he told, so he was pretty sure that they would arrest him to stop him from talking and preaching anymore. And in fact, he was arrested just a few hours after the Seder. He was put on trial that night and executed the next day. The Romans put him to death using a common but very unpleasant type of execution known as crucifixion. He died on Friday at sundown.
I don't like this part of the story.
Because the Jewish Sabbath started right at sundown, and the Jewish law of the time did not allow you to bury anyone on the Sabbath day, Jesus' friends could not bury him right away. There were no funeral homes back in those days, so Jesus' friends put his body in a tomb, a sort of cave cut into the side of a hill, where the body would be safe until after the Sabbath was over. First thing on Sunday morning, some of Jesus' friends went to the tomb to get the body ready for burial. But to their great surprise, the body was gone, and there was a man sitting in the tomb who talked to them about Jesus.
So where did Jesus' body go, and who was the guy that was sitting there?
We Unitarian Universalists wonder if perhaps some of Jesus' other friends had already come along and buried the body. After Jesus' trial, his friends must have been disorganized and confused. They were all upset that Jesus was dead, but they also worried that one or more of them might be arrested by the Romans. So perhaps a few of Jesus' friends buried him quickly and in secret, and there wasn't time to tell all of his friends.
That makes sense. So why did they say Jesus rose from the dead? Well, probably all of his friends were sad. Yeah, and they missed him so much, they wanted to believe he was alive.
We Unitarian Universalists say that Jesus does live on because we still remember what he taught. He taught that we should love all people as we love ourselves. And if you really do live your life that way, you'll find you've made the world a better place.
We now turn our thoughts to the important events of our lives which we wish others in this community to share. If you have a joy or a sorrow you would like me to speak this morning, we would like to hear it. So please send your joys and sorrows to joyconcern@uucpa.org or simply post them in the Zoom chat box and I will share them out loud. Having heard all of these, let us take some time of silence to hold what we've heard. Blessed be. Please join in as Bruce leads us in singing The Ceaseless Flow of Endless Time.
sweet shall be our New Year vow.
We have two brief readings today. One is from the novelist Susan Ertz from her book, Anger in the Sky. Millions long for immortality who don't know what to do with themselves on a rainy afternoon. And from the novelist and nature writer Richard Jefferies. It is eternity now. I am in the midst of it. It is about me in the sunshine. I am in it as the butterfly in the light-laden air. Nothing has to come. It is now. Now is eternity. Now is the immortal life. One version of the story of Easter says, after Jesus died, he was resurrected. Body, soul, in every way. He lived again in heaven and will never die. And by conquering death in this way, he conquered it for all of us, or at least all who believe in him. As the poet John Donne said to death, because of God's power and Jesus' courage, death, thou shalt die. And so generations of Christians have pursued immortality. Probably most of the folks here have a different version of the story of Easter in mind, one more like Dan suggested, that Jesus really died, just like every other human who has ever lived or will ever live. If it does happen that we are actually immortal, in this version, it doesn't seem to be a result of Jesus's having been resurrected. And yet I think there is a great deal in our culture that pushes us to pursue immortality, even if we are not Christians, even if we don't believe that we ascend to heaven, even if we're pretty sure that we only live this one life. This pressure is subtle sometimes, but it works on us, and it can keep us from living as fully and joyfully as we might do. What does help us live joyfully is to take death seriously. I don't want to be a downer on this beautiful Easter morning, quite the opposite. As wise Christians say, to get to Easter, you have to go through Good Friday. To get to fuller life, you have to be aware of death. So please bear with me while I talk about less happy things for a little while. The brood 10 cicadas are beginning to emerge. For 17 years, they have hunkered underground, safely below the frost line. They have clung to the small roots of trees and sustained themselves on the sweetened water that runs through the roots. Occasionally, they have molted, shedding their outer layer to make room for growth. They have stayed put. Now, they emerge. This is their big moment. They tunnel up to the surface and find a tree or some other vertical surface. The birds are thrilled as thousands of cicadas crawl on the ground and fly through the air. They have themselves a grand feast. But plenty of the cicadas make it from the ground to the trees. They huddle there as they molt for the last time, and their new exoskeleton dries. Then they look for a mate in that crowd. This is what a wildly successful emergence looks like for a brood 10 cicada. She or he tunnels to the surface, sheds, flies to a tree without becoming a bird's appetizer, sends out a signal, and is answered by another cicada. If our successful cicada, our Bill Gates, our Frida Kahlo, our Megan Rapinoe of cicada kind, is male, he mates and dies. If she is female, she mates, lays her eggs, and dies. The ones who don't find a mate, they die too. Their lovely wings litter the ground, bringing a shimmering beauty to those who pass by. They have waited 17 years for this. After a couple of months, the eggs hatch. The larvae, or nymphs, drop to the ground. They crawl down to below the frost line. Each finds a slender tree root and grips it, and there they will be until 2038. If you are in a particularly Good Friday frame of mind when you learn about this cycle, you might well think, that's it? That's the whole story? You stay underground for 17 years, have a few weeks of a frenzied attempt to reproduce, and die so that your offspring can do the same thing? What kind of life is that? And you might also think, Are we any different? We emerge, we live for a little while, we die. And if we have reproduced, then our offspring do the same thing. Oh, sure, our cycle is much longer than the cicadas. Ours lasts for maybe 80 or even 100 of the planet's trips around the sun, while cicadas last only a little more than 17. And most insects' life cycles are much shorter than that. Somewhere in this universe, there must be a creature who lives for 10,000 of our years. And for that creature, we can imagine the cicadas and the humans evoking a response of, that's it? That's the whole story? They hatch, they breed, they die, repeat? When we have our Good Friday moments, the moments when we realize that we too have to die, we can respond in a couple of different ways. One is by denying it, insisting that, no, in fact, we live forever. Well, maybe we do, maybe we don't. We don't really know. We do know that we have invented entire religions to assert that immortality. Solemn rituals and glorious cathedrals, the intricacies of priesthoods and scriptures and sermons and music, all saying, fear not, we live forever. Fortunately, they proclaim lots of wiser truths along the way, and there's that music and those vaulted ceilings. As 21st century US Americans, we're also immersed in a different immortality story. Well, two really. There's the one of eat right and stay fit and you will not die, which none of us would actually claim with a straight face, but which nevertheless sneaks into health reporting frequently. Even the New Yorker, which is a scrupulously edited magazine, slipped up last week, reporting a study found that subjects who interrupted their sitting every half hour reduced their chance of dying by 55%. No. The subjects who sat for 8 hours without a break had a 100% mortality rate. The subjects who interrupted their sitting every half hour also died at a rate of 100%, time permitting. But I'm thinking more of the secular religion of make your mark, leave a legacy, as if we will live forever if our name is on a patent or in the history books or in a family genealogy written 5 generations from now. Now, I want to say that leaving a legacy is an admirable impulse. It's just that it won't give us immortality. That wonderful invention of ours will disappear when the sun goes supernova. But it can do a great deal to remind us to imbue our lives with meaning. There's just one trick: to resist the whispers that say, make your mark, any mark, and instead ask ourselves, what kind of legacy do I want to leave behind? That's another response to realizing that we are mortal. Anyone with the resources that you and I have could probably make a monument to ourselves that would outlast us by thousands of years, maybe hundreds of thousands. All we need to produce is a good, solid chunk of plastic. Carve our names on it, and voila, evidence that we lived, waiting for the people of the year 102,021 to find it. But not much of a legacy. Some humans have left more beautiful legacies than that, but at such a terrible cost that the balance sheet on their lives is not good. That's what tends to happen when we become more concerned with making a mark, any mark, than making sure the mark is not a stain. Like Emperor Qin Shi Huang, the first emperor of the Qin dynasty. In his years as king, then emperor, he had a huge impact. He united the 7 warring states through brutal warfare. He enforced conformity with his doctrines by having books burned and their authors executed. He began the building of the Great Wall and the Grand Canal. The wall served a double purpose, defense and a labor camp for political prisoners, one of whom was his own son. Those sent to build the northernmost part of the wall, as his son was, mostly perished in the attempt. With an unbending insistence on control, he made his mark. His dynasty gave China its name. Not surprisingly, Huang Di also wanted to live forever, and he intended to be as well served in his heavenly life as he had been in his earthly one, so he conscripted thousands of artisans to make him soldiers, courtiers, concubines, cooks, everything an emperor would need out of clay. Ironically, he created a wondrous work that we still admire, the terracotta army. It didn't make him immortal, of course, nor are his terracotta soldiers immortal, but certainly he had an impact beyond his years. But alongside the beauty of the work he commissioned is the violence with which it was created, a violence that matched that of his reign. The artisans were probably slaves. And when Qin Shi Huang died suddenly, the sculptors were killed and entombed with their creations so that they could never reveal the location of the hidden mausoleum. That's one way of making one's mark. Here's another, appropriate to this day, April 4th. Martin Luther King Jr., who died on this day 53 years ago, knew in his own words that he might not get to the promised land. But as he said in his final speech, he knew his people would eventually get there. That was the legacy he wished to leave. Did I say he died? Well, yes, he did. He did. And even his memory will one day be gone. But what he did in his 39 years of life is still changing our world for the better. The author of Ecclesiastes advised, "Whatever your hand finds to do, do with your might, for there is no work or thought or knowledge or wisdom in Sheol to which you are going." Sheol, the pit. And in the imaginings of the musical, Alexander Hamilton said, "God help and forgive me, I want to build something that's gonna outlive me." So do I, Mr. Secretary. So do many of us. But we don't want to work with all our might only to leave a chunk of plastic or a legacy of terror or death. So what are we building? What is it that our hands find to do? And in the end, what does longevity have to do with it? It may well be that during the 17 years that they suck on tree roots, the cicadas are having deep relationships. Maybe they are composing great works of art, perhaps symphonies of chemical signals that we can't decode, but that lift the spirits of other cicadas. As Susan Ertz reminds us, there's no point in yearning for immortality if we're bored on a rainy afternoon, but the flip side is also true. If we can find joy and meaning in the moments that we do have, then they were enough. What we have is this moment. Will you breathe with me in it just to feel it, this moment? And we have this one. Changing someone's life for the better matters because they matter right now. Making art or music or a graceful stream of words matters to those who appreciate their beauty right now. Time with children matters because they matter right now. Understanding something new matters because our minds matter right now. And if we were to disappear off the face of the earth tomorrow, none of that would be lost. It would have happened. It would have mattered. This is a wonderful thing to remember because, friends, we are going to disappear tomorrow. Tomorrow is a very long time away, measured in cicada time. And it's only a breath away, measured in 10,000-year-old alien time. By our time, however many days or months or years it is too soon. Good Friday is coming. But the life and death of Jesus, of Martin Luther King, of our kin, the cicadas, promise us, before Good Friday comes, we can have our Easter. We can have our Easter if we awake and arise and greet the dawn that is before us, within us, in this very breath. Amen. Please join in singing now as Bruce, Mayo, Jane, and Richard lead us in singing For All That Is Our Life.
For all that is our life, we sing our thanks and praise. For all life is a gift which we are called to use to build the common good and make our own days glad. For needs which others serve, for services we give, for work and its rewards, for hours of rest and love, we come with praise and thanks. For all that is our life. For sorrow we must bear, for failures, pain, and loss, for each new thing we learn, for fearful hours that pass, we come with praise and thanks. For all that is our life. For all that is our life, we sing our thanks and praise. For all life is a gift which we are called to use to build the common good and make our own
In the words of Duke Gray, the blessing of truth be upon us. The power of love direct us and sustain us. And may the peace of this community guard our going out and our coming in from this time forth until we meet again. Please stay after the benediction for our virtual coffee time. You'll be invited to small group conversations in our breakout rooms, or you can stay here in the main room with me if you wish to discuss the service. You should be able to move between breakout rooms on your own. The rooms will stay open about half an hour. Now, please unmute yourself and turn on your video, and you can put your hands up to quote unquote touch one another's hands while we say our benediction together.
Go out
Into the world.
In peace.
Go out into the world in peace. Be of good courage. Hold fast to what is right. Turn no one evil. Strengthen the faint-hearted.
Support the weak.
Help
The suffering.
Rejoice
in beauty.
love
And peace.
honor all beings.
Amen.
Blessed
Beautiful day.
You want to chat with anybody?